Good afternoon. I'm Ali Knight, Fly's President and CEO. This past year has been unusual, unprecedented, exhausting, exhilarating, and yet we've come out stronger, more prepared, and more ready than ever to pursue justice on behalf of our young people in our communities. But we're also on the eve of a lot more change, with the racial justice reckoning, with the pandemic finally subsiding, with the world reopening. There's a lot of opportunity for change. But there's also a lot of change here at Fly. I'd like to introduce Fly's new Board of Directors Chair, June Wang. We're going to spend a couple of minutes hearing from June, getting to know her, and hearing her vision for the board and helping Fly evolve from service to some to justice for all. Welcome, June.
Hi, Ali. So great to be here.
It's great to have you here, my old friend. So, we are friends.
We are.
Great partners in this work and have been. Tell us a little bit about yourself for other folks who don't know you, and tell us your connection to Fly's mission.
Sure. I've known and been with Fly for about 5 years now. But a little bit about me, I am born and raised in California, so Californian at heart. But my parents are both first-generation immigrants. My dad came from Korea, my mom came from Taiwan, but their parents before them were immigrants. And growing up, even in the Bay Area 4+ decades ago, it was a different place. And I think as any young person, you're trying to find your place in this world. And so I remember struggling with understanding, who am I, sort of as both Chinese and American, with how do I show up in this world? How do I help others? I grew up hearing stories of my grandmother fleeing war, or of my dad's summers working in these hot canning factories, and just knowing that there were others who struggled a lot more, even more so than I did. And so what can I do to help others? And it wasn't until I was in my 20s, and probably even now, that I finally became comfortable with who I am, my identity and what I have to offer. And I know when I first met Fly, one of the things that impressed me most was how much Fly had this unshakable belief in young people. Young people who may be struggling with a lot of the same things, and yet just knew deeply and profoundly that young people had so much to offer to this world. And then seeing these youth who had overcome so much, whether family trauma or whether through the systems, and yet I would see them speak, and they are so poised and so comfortable and confident in who they are, and have so much to give, give back to their communities, give back to our society. And so that's the Fly magic, and that's the Fly magic that I knew I wanted to be a part of. So I joined the board about 5 years ago, and have also served as a law facilitator at Seminole High School for a semester, and then I'm currently also in the Learning and Impact Committee.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing. So talking a little bit about the Learning and Impact Committee, I remember when you joined, we were excited because of your experience in learning and development, organizational learning and development. Fly was experimenting with this idea of, instead of having a program committee, we would sort of start a committee that would invite board members to get involved and understand the messiness of understanding learning and understanding our impact as an organization. You've went from helping us launch the committee to chairing it. Can you tell us a little bit about what the Learning and Impact Committee is, and also talk a little bit about Fly's evolution through your eyes as chair of the committee? Sure.
So having worked in the social sector, sort of wanting to know that you're making a difference for any nonprofit organization is at the end of the day what's most important. So how do we know, right, that our young people are changing as a result of our programs and our interventions? And the individual stories are so important. They're stories, and they let us know that change is happening. And yet you also want to know that sort of systematically, sort of across your programs, that it's these interventions that are helping bring about those changes. But how do you measure that? How do you really know that is notoriously very challenging in the social sector. And many people continue to try to figure out, how do we know that our programs are making a difference? But that really is the challenge and the work of the Learning and Impact Committee, and certainly of FLY's evaluation and learning staff. So the role of the committee has really always been to help understand FLY's impact and then support staff in adapting and learning and growing so that we continue to magnify and have more impact.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on so many things that I think are so important and really speak to FLY's evolution. The notion that, you know, our ability to impact young people, to support young people in their growth and development is limited by the opportunities and the obstacles that they face when navigating systems. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, it's also accelerated and exponentially, you know, increased by engaging the community.
Right.
The notion that it takes a village is absolutely one that we live by here at FLY. So one final question. On July 1, you assumed the role of chair of FLY's board of directors. You step into this leadership role at a time when the country is still very much in a racial justice reckoning. FLY's work has evolved in a context of the larger work or the larger need for justice reform, juvenile justice, criminal justice, public safety reform. Could you say a little bit about what you see for the future of FLY and mm-hmm. what you see the board's role is in getting us there? Sure.
Well, I think so much of what's happening around the country now and what people are seeing is what FLY has always cared about and worked on. And so FLY's youth are Black, Brown, Asian, LGBTQ+. These are the youth we work with day in and day out. And in some ways, seeing the country recognize that sort of continued pain and trauma is hard and yet also good. And it's the time for FLY's work to really be done. And so I think FLY has traditionally always focused on the youth because that is what matters. And yet I think as it's evolved, it's really thought about how do we also impact the systems that the youth are involved in? Because as you said, the youth aren't in a vacuum. They live in communities, they're in schools, they're needing to get involved with the justice system. And so how do we influence those so that they also positively support our youth rather than create more trauma, right, on them? And so what's been exciting has been seeing this change. You know, our theory of change previously focused really just on the impact on the individual, whereas now it's really expanded through work done a couple years ago with the Sobrato Impact Lab to really focus on what is our impact more broadly for youth. You know, it's not just about recidivism or anti-recidivism, but it's also about educational outcomes, but more broadly, the community impact. We engage so many volunteers every year who are mentors, who are facilitators. There's an impact there, and even more so than on the systems, the educational and the juvenile justice systems. Those are changing as a result of FLY's involvement, and yet they continue to need a change. And so how do we understand and continue to advocate for those changes? So looking ahead, I mean, I'm excited. I think it is a time for FLY to continue to step up into this important work. And I think at the forefront of that is really elevating the voices of the youth. It is their experiences that need to be heard. It is their voices that need to be heard. And I think our role as a board is really to support that and to support our staff who are working with the youth. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about what I'm looking forward to. And I'd love to ask you some questions. Does that sound good?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, you've just finished 1 year, your first year as FLY's new CEO, sort of the first CEO after a founder transition. But you also came on during a pandemic, during some economic uncertainty, as well as all the racial reckoning that we've been talking about. And so, how's your first year? How'd it go?
You know, so you just hit it on the head. So I've been at, as you know, I've been at FLY for going on 7 years now. Mm-hmm. I was in the COO role for 6 years before stepping into the CEO role. And then I transitioned on July 1, 2020, mm-hmm. as you mentioned, in the middle of a pandemic, economic downturn, racial justice reckoning. Not the transition that any of us saw.
Right, not what we anticipated.
The really good thing about FLY is that FLY is an organization about planning. And because we planned for we planned for the transition, even though it didn't go as planned, we were ready for what came. And this year's been an amazing year. It's been humbling. It's been a year of learning, but a year of success and validation that this is the direction that Fly should be going in. And you know, I have the board to thank. You know, an incredible board. I have the staff, leadership, the executive leadership team, and I have the founder who's still serving as my chief ambassador, who's supporting me in tons of ways. And so, not the year we planned, but because we planned for it, we were prepared, and it was a great year, I think.
Can I ask what are you most proud of in this past year, and also what was most challenging? And maybe they're not the same
Yeah,
thing.
no, they are. So I think I'll start with the most challenging. I'll start with what I'm most proud of. I'm proud of how innovative and responsive we were to the needs of the young people in the community and how we saw that as justice. You know, stepping into a year where, you know, we had changed sort of the paradigm from we're just serving kids to know we want justice for our kids. And we saw every opportunity to lean into the moment to do that. I think, you know, I'm so proud of how, you know, when the pandemic first started, our staff shifted from, you know, we're going to support kids to achieve their long-term goals to we're going to support kids to get through this crisis.
Right. Get them
families,
Wi-Fi.
Get them Wi-Fi. Get them computers. Helping. So I tell a story about like when the shelter-in-place first hit in March of 2020. Two things were going on. You know, the schools were shutting down. And we were convincing schools that we could support them to pivot in distance learning. We could take our law-related education virtually, and then we could modify how we delivered it so that kids could continue to learn and be engaged. And the courts were still operating. The courts were still operating, even though they didn't want people in. And you know, our CAFA mentor program is about court advocacy, the community being in the courtroom. We were convincing the courts that we could be in a courtroom virtually. We could have mentors and case managers and family members show up at a court appearance through FaceTime and through other virtual platforms. We were being innovative, not just for the young people, but for our partners so that we can continue to have an impact. And I'm very, very proud of our ability to do that. I think the thing that's been tough for all of us, and continues to be tough, and that's why I'm so grateful that we're finally moving to a place where the world is reopening, is that Fly is an organization that's about relationships. And it's really hard to replicate true, authentic relationships in a two-dimensional
in a box on a screen.
On a screen. I mean, you know, we're lucky to have, you know, Zoom and other sort of teleconferencing, technology because we were able to connect. But it was tough. But we got through it, and you know, I like to think that we got through it because we were strategic. We were thinking about how do we, you know, be purposeful and intentional in this moment in a way that didn't burn us out. We were capable. We kept the can-do attitude for everything. You know, we didn't let any obstacle defeat us or deflate us, and we were committed. We put young people at the center. Our commitment to justice was always a motivation for us to do better, and as a result, I feel like we've come out stronger.
For sure. Well, as you look ahead, we've got through the year, and not just, you know, survived, as you said, but thrived in many ways. But what do you see going forward as the priorities for the organization?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things. I think the first thing is that, you know, the areas that we've grown, the ways we've been innovative, we've got to now take those learnings and normalize them, make them be our new way of being. Everything from how do we adjust to meeting young people's needs in person and virtually, how do we support staff to be able to navigate and be innovative in service delivery in a way that's mission aligned in the fidelity of the mission. But we've also grown. Our systems change work because of the national climate around justice. The opportunities for systems change have been quite large, and we've stepped into that. So I think we've got to now start to really lean into that and build the capacity to do that work going forward. So I'm excited about systems change work. I'm excited about us adjusting to this new reality and be innovative and take the learnings to sort of be more impactful. I'm also excited about our growth. We've been really responsive to the needs in the 3 communities that we're in: Alameda County, San Mateo County, Santa Clara County. But we've also been asked to support other neighboring counties like Monterey County and Contra Costa County. I'm really excited about that growth. And that growth is going to be a new type of growth for us. It's going to be through partnerships. So not necessarily through us serving young people in those communities, but working with the community, working with the systems within those community to bring the learnings, to bring the FLY model to those communities. So it's a new way of advancing justice. It goes back to that that tagline, from service to some to justice for all. And I'm excited about living that out.
Yeah, and doing that in new ways.
Yep.
Well, one last question. In my role as board chair, how can the board continue to support you and the organization?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I think you hit it on the head when you answered the question about your vision for the board in this moment. I think continuing to be our advocates, to lean in and be bold and brave in this moment, to support me as a new CEO, which you guys have done an amazing job, support the team, and continue to be stewards and ambassadors of the mission. It's been a wonderful year, an amazing year to grow on or to build upon, and I'm excited about working with you and working with the rest of the board to do that. So.
Well, we're excited to be here, and I think we will offer all the support that we can to you, certainly, and then also to this agency. So.